Psychics and mediums. What is a psychic, a medium, or an oracle? It's someone who speaks and conveys information from a higher realm or from a different dimension. They may be talking to a spiritual guide, a god, or spirits of the deceased. They may read Akashic records. Oracle means prophecy, that is telling what will happen in the future. Mediums specialize in having conversation with spirits of the deceased. The most famous psychic is Pythia, also known as the Oracle at Delphi in classical Greece. She had to be morally pure and live in a temple. She sat on a tripod and went into a trance, which has been called an ecstasy or a frenzy. Allegedly, the god Apollo spoke through her. She was a powerful woman. The oracle was widely sought for advice on life, war, government, and personal questions. It turns out that there were vapors coming up from a chasm in the rocks below her. I'll let you research the speculation on what those vapors were and what their effect was on a person. Fortune tellers also belong in this group, but they usually use divining tools. That can be a pendulum, tarot cards, rune stones, I Ching sticks, even a scrying mirror. Here's an example of a scrying mirror, an I Ching, and a labyrinth. James Rhodes Buchanan introduced the word psychometry. It's a subset of psychic activity. The idea is that all things give off an energy that can be read via touch. Presumably, someone holding the item has transferred energy into it, and a psychic can read the item and tell a story that it carries. Spiritualism and seances were very popular in the 19th century. It all started with the Fox sisters in Hydesville, New York in 1848. Their publicity came out with a message that there is intelligence beyond the grave. You can imagine the drama of that message. After the 1950s, there was an explosion of interest. Mediums speaking to the dead. There were touring mediums. There were spiritual circles. There were camp meetings. People held seances in their living rooms. There were at least 75 spiritualist publications. Seances became a popular entertainment. There was a national convention of spiritualists in Chicago in 1873. Soon after that, the Theosophical Society was founded in New York City to organize spiritualism into a movement. Then also the National Spiritualist Association of Churches was founded later on. They were responding to the proliferation of mediums and the legal attacks on mediums and spiritualism, criticism from ministers. They endorsed the practice of spiritualism and spiritual healing in a church setting. By the 1920s, there were spiritualist camps all over the country, and they were all summer. People held seances every day. Why? Why is spiritualism so attractive? It's because of grief over the loss of loved ones. The Civil War in the 19th century was devastating, up to 700,000 dead. Throughout the century, families lost children to disease at a very high rate. 30 to 45% of children died. People needed large families to have a surviving child. World War I brought huge losses. And then, even greater than that, the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918. It's estimated that 500 million people worldwide fell sick in a period of 15 months. At that time, it was 3 to 5% of the world's population. At least two organizations formed in the 19th century to research and investigate psychic phenomena and maybe debunk mediums. The first was a Society for Psychical Research in London, and they had a journal and they reported out their investigations and study results. Some members who became fierce investigators also became believers. Soon after that, the American Society of Psychical Research was founded, and they are both still active in conducting and archiving research. You can watch intuitives in action on YouTube now. Here are several that I watch. These are currently reading on current events. They are not using divining tools like tarot cards. So you can watch what that activity looks like. Are mediums the real deal? Is there any scientific evidence? Gary Schwartz of the University of Arizona is a leading researcher. He studied and found that mediums typically can produce more than 80 pieces of information about the deceased relative, and their accuracy rate was about 83%. He concluded that mediums are in direct communication with the deceased. There's a recent article that is wonderful read called "Why Did So Many Victorians Try to Speak to the Dead" by Casey Sepp in the New Yorker magazine. It's a gripping story. You will love it if you love this topic. Some of her points: 1/3 of Americans say they have communicated with the dead. Those historic camps for spiritualists attracted tens of thousands of people. There are 100 spiritualist churches in the US and 300 in the UK. During the 19th century, spirit photos were very popular. That was where the deceased show up in a photograph. And one point she makes is that suddenly with this trend, women were performing in public and women were making money. And she suggests that part of the backlash against spiritualism was against women changing their role. Here's the picture of the article if you look it up online.